I'm gonna have to make a confession. I didn't used to hate Newcastle, but from what I've seen of all of their Amazon stuff and Eddie Howe giving it all the big un about Ten Hag and stuff, it's starting to develop. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. Today we've got a very, very special guest, one of my good mates and ex-colleagues, football reporter from Sky Sports News, Dev Trehan. How you doing, Dev?
I'm doing great, Antony and Jonty. Look, it's so great to be here with you guys. I mean, feels more like a family reunion than anything else. But yeah, no, absolute pleasure to be here with you boys. Love this, love it.
Yeah, man. This is something again that me and Johns we've been very calculated with all our guest planning. They've either been like one of our best mates who just happens to be an Arsenal Man U fan, or some of our favourite people just generally that we've interacted with at work, or at different places in our life who've got great opinions about football. You're like a triple whammy because you also are just absolutely smashing it at Sky Sports News as well. So yeah, really happy to have you on, man. And I think it's perfect timing. Obviously, South Asian Heritage Month, something we want to try and endorse and support from our East and Southeast Asian side as well. All that Pan Asian love and all that. But we'll get into what you're working on and all the great stuff you're doing at Sky Sports News and also just in the community. But first of all, we've got to mention a few other things around United and Arsenal, don't we, John? So I think the first thing we'll talk about is, for me anyway, fantastic news. Harry Maguire. I don't know if Fabrizio Romano has given the here we go or Dharmesh Sheth, Sky Sports' very own Dharmesh Sheth, has said that it's done yet, but apparently £30 million fee agreed. I am ecstatic. From a Man U fan perspective, I don't agree with all the booing in every single match. I think it's now getting a bit harsh. It's getting a bit it's getting a bit bullying-ish. But I do think it's just the right decision for everyone. For us to get a bit of money, he's clearly not one of our kind of uh, first two choice centre backs. It doesn't even look like he's the first up off the bench either. So I think it's best for him, best for us, best for England as well, because West Ham will probably play a similar way to Gareth Southgate, and I think he'll get some football and maybe turn out to be a good buy for them. But first of all, Dev from the Johns, intro you quickly. How you doing, bro? You good?
I'm good. I just want to say I'm super thankful for you coming on, Dev. As Anthony said, we like to get on our friends that we know talk absolute rubbish when it comes to Arsenal and Man United, but we also like to get on people with unique perspectives and particularly people that actually have some skin in the game. So really happy to have you on. And yeah, give us your perspective on bloody Maguire
Yeah.
going to West Ham.
What do you think, man? Are you going to be able to give us any intel, or is it just pretty much as the reports are saying?
Well, look, I just got to say respect, boys, and I'm so pleased I said what I did at the start, right? And I was really complimentary before, and I had no idea you were going to say all these beautiful things. But look, I think with Harry Maguire, it's everything is pointing towards a departure from Old Trafford. The writing's on the wall. That's no secret. I just don't know how you feel, Anthony, in terms of it was a big transfer fee, a big transfer outlay for Harry Maguire in the first instance. I think the more pressing issue is whether or not you think he's delivered value for money, whether you're concerned about the sort of the money that's been involved and the hit that Manchester United are going to have to take on this deal and Harry Maguire's departure from Old Trafford.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try and keep it PG and not go too far in because I think there are a lot of fans out there already saying probably kind of over the top stuff about Harry Maguire. But I'm personally at the stage where you've just got to do the deal, take the financial hit, because we know that we got absolutely rinsed initially on the fee, and it was never going to be something we were going to be able to recoup more than what we ended up getting. I think if we waited another season or more, we wouldn't have got 30 million. Considering he's not going to be playing really, like bar a big injury to Lissandro Martinez or Varane, I don't think he'd be playing. So I have to say, I think it's probably just the right decision, and you just got to take the big hit. We obviously look like mugs for paying 80 million for him and selling him for 30, but as soon as we did the initial deal, like this is the future that we decided for ourselves at that moment. Like it was it was unlikely that it was ever going to work out, just simply for the fact I think he doesn't. I don't know if he's the level required to play for a team that's hopefully challenging for the big trophies. I think he's a decent player for a club of like West Ham's level, in Europe, even in Europa League, possibly. But I think when you get into those Champions League echelons, not many teams play a back three. Not many teams play low block football. And the ones that did were probably Man United under Mourinho, Tottenham under Mourinho and Conte, not many others really in English football. So it was inevitable. And at this point, I think it's just going to save everyone drama, isn't it? Like, I think you can see from even pre-season, the fans booing him, like it's getting to a place where it's going to get it's already kind of getting quite ugly. So I think it's just the best thing. He gets a chance to resurrect his career, hopefully play for England at the Euros, play for West Ham in Europe. I'm sure he'll be paid handsomely. So I don't think there's really a loser in this. I think the only people who are quite upset at this news are probably rival fans, and that's maybe where I can get Jonty's perspective. What do you think, Johns?
I mean, I think you summed it up pretty well. I think it's a good move for everyone in the situation, given the circumstances. So I think for West Ham, it's decent. I know everyone jumps on the hate train for Maguire. He's definitely not, as you said, like a Champions League level star centre back. He's not going to be delivering like what Virgil van Dijk did for Liverpool in terms of the fee. We know that. But we also know from European tournaments or from essentially the national team, he can do all right. If you put him in the right kind of system, he can be a valuable part of that system. And I think under David Moyes, he's a very experienced manager. It's funny that there's going to be a link up between two Man United rejects, or two people that couldn't make it at United are going to be back together. That'll be nice. I'm sure they'll have a lot of stories to complain about United in the dressing room, so that'll be fun for them. But I genuinely think that it's a good move for Maguire. He needs to get football so he can get into the national tournaments that he wants to get into. Man United clearly don't need him if he's your fourth choice centre-back. I feel like your fourth choice centre-back needs to be a youngster. Give somebody a chance to get into that team. Maybe not the £80 million marquee signing that was supposed to be your kind of starting centre-back. So I think generally from that perspective, for Man United, 30 million is decent, considering like the hate that he's been getting, and how easy it is to jump on that train, and how weird the football market can be in terms of hype and then that translation into fee. I think 30 million you've got to be happy with. I mean, I'm looking at Arsenal. We're trying, like, people are offering us 30 million for Balogun. So Balogun, Maguire, I feel like that's a decent level to get for him. I don't know why you're saying no to McTominay at the same price, but I think 30 million's good. Get some money on your books. I know that you guys need to do a little bit of that this season, don't you? So I think, yeah, it's all round a good move. And I hope he does all right at West Ham. It's nice that they kind of lose a key England player and kind of gain one at the same time. Maybe it'll keep the West Ham fans a little bit happier too, that they're starting to make some moves in the transfer market.
Yeah, I think from their perspective, I think it should be good to get an England international, an ex-Man U captain. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but all of these things are positives for them, I think, at their level and for their campaign coming up. But yeah, let's move on to the Community Shield. Shall we say the winners of the Community Shield, Johns? Congratulations. First piece of silverware of the season.
Finally.
We watched the match together. First of all, what did you make of it?
It's just like a lot of the games that we see between two big clubs, is they're typically, or at least between Man City and another big club, is that they're not very entertaining. Unless Man City's smashing someone. If it gets anywhere near being competitive, they don't tend to be the most riveting of games. So, I mean, it was pretty much silent. Havertz had a couple of good chances, and I think from him, people are getting onto him a bit too much. I feel like he got in good positions. He didn't completely fluff. It wasn't like a Nunes type thing where he's smashing it into like Rose Ed. He was getting it on target, at least, making the keeper do something. So I feel like that was positive. I know that Chelsea fans are saying like, oh yeah, but we saw that from him over and over again. But give it a minute. maybe Arteta will teach him how to shoot. Who knows? Rice looked good. Timber was my biggest surprise. Timber looked really, really good. I was really happy with him. He's kind of one of the signings that maybe snuck under the radar for a lot of people. So I'm really, really happy with him as well. Trossard looked great off the bench. I know it was a bit of a jammy goal, but I'll take it. Anything that goes in the back of the net is good enough for me. Partey looks like he's continuing shocking form. He just looks, I don't know if he doesn't look unfit, but he just doesn't look match fit, if that makes sense. He doesn't look like he's really up there and sharp. And it shows when you play against people like Rodri and, in this case, Kovacic and all these kinds of players. Your mistakes get found out really, really quickly. So, I mean, from that perspective, it was a competitive game. It wasn't the most riveting. And I'm happy to win it. I don't take too much stock from it, though. It's not like Arsenal winning the Community Shield now means we're like the boogeymen for Man City. Like, I'm seeing some people think, like, really celebrate that we won the game. Whereas winning on penalty is like, on penalties is, you won the game, fair enough, but you didn't win it outright. You know what I mean? It's like winning in tennis on a tiebreak. It's a bit jammy, so I'm not going to take too much from it. But I'm happy nonetheless to be able to get something over them, especially when we come up against them in the first game against them in the season. I don't want us to be remembering getting battered at the end of last season. I'd much prefer us to remember getting a jammy win over them in the Community Shield. So that's kind of how I see it. I'm not sure how Dev you see it or Ant. Like,
yeah, Dev,
am I talking?
No. I agree with a lot of the things you said, but yeah, Dev, what do you think? Did you get a chance to see it? What was your summary of the game?
Well, look, I mean, I was actually working at the time. I was working on transfer breaking news. It's been a really, really busy week, but I did catch up with it. And I just think that, I suppose what I would say is that the charity Community Shield, I was about to call it the Charity Shield. Sadly, I'm of a vintage that used to call it the Charity Shield, of course. But the Community Shield is not an indicator at all. And Manchester City's record in the Community Shield in recent years hasn't been great, yet they've won the title more often than not. And yeah, look, I think with Arsenal, I think it probably will take a little bit of time for things to really kick in and really gel. And look, it's great to be in a position where you get you'll take it any which way it comes, right? If it comes off the knee, if it comes off the back, you'll just take the wins. You know, I think we've been through, or certainly I say we, I only say we because I live in North London and the majority of my friends are Arsenal fans, and sometimes I forget which company I'm in. But yeah, no, I think we've seen everything with Arsenal in the last sort of 10, 15 years, the glory years under Arsene Wenger, the dynasty, the transition from that, did he stay too long? Did the decline? Unai Emery. Did Unai Emery come in too early? Because right now, Unai Emery, he's on everybody's lips right now for what he's doing at Aston Villa. To seeing Arsenal, you know, put in a really valiant effort for the title last season and surprising everyone. I don't think anybody at the beginning of the season thought that there was, you know, that they were in contention for the title and actually outright clear leaders at one point. I think the drop-off is a little bit concerning, and maybe that's a sign that it evened itself out over the course of the season. So for me, Arsenal still have absolutely everything to prove next season, to prove that it wasn't an anomaly, to prove that last season wasn't a fluke. And I suppose you look at the way in which they've gone about their transfer business, they've shown real ambition. You know, you look at Timber coming in for big money. You look at Kai Havertz, who's come in for big money, as you rightly said, and I think he'll need time to settle and find his true position. I'm not sure if he ever really found that at Chelsea. And then, of course, you've got Declan Rice, who's come in for £105 million. And, of course, going back to your earlier point, you know, you were talking about West Ham and the deal for Harry Maguire, and are they holding Manchester United potentially holding out too much for Scott McTominay? But West Ham are on the verge of signing 3 top-class players, because James Ward-Prowse looks, as it stands, on the verge of completing a deal from Southampton, the captain of the club. You've got the potential there for less than what you've received for Declan Rice, of course, subject to agent fees, etc., and obviously higher wages over the course of the season. But it's not a bad way to replace somebody like Declan Rice with a Harry Maguire, a Scott McTominay, and the other midfielder as well. So yeah, that's just my 2
I agree
cents
with you,
worth.
man. I think it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear my amateur opinions validated somewhat by a proper professional in the football world. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the way, first of all, that match it wasn't the best, but I wasn't expecting it to be. Charity or community shields, whatever you want to call them, have never been the most scintillating football. Essentially, it's a glorified friendly, isn't it? Really, it's like kind of your most important friendly just before the real season kicks off. So you like City, I think have only played three or four games in the preseason, so they're behind everyone as well. So it's kind of it's hard to use it as a real barometer of what will happen in the actual season once it kicks off next week. But yeah, I think Arsenal did all right. I think a draw was probably fair because I don't think City really deserved necessarily to win in regular time. But yeah, there were some decent performances. I think Havertz wasn't bad, but I think he did a lot of what he kind of had shown he was capable of doing at Chelsea. Held the ball up well, linked play up well, but just didn't have that killer instinct to put chances away. So yeah, I think the jury's still out on him. And yeah, the one that really stood out to me though was Timber. For him to play left back, not really a position he played at Ajax too much, and to do it like with such calm, and just he looked like he'd played there loads, and like he didn't look like he was a new signing. So you might see him feature in my predictions later on in the podcast, because I think he's top player. Very pissed off that you managed to get him and we didn't get him last season, but I see how he fits in Arsenal's system. I think he's an Arsenal player, and I think he'll be amazing. And from City's side, I don't think they're really offered much. And
I think their subs did. So I really liked them, and I don't like to say this because obviously they're big rivals of ours, but I really liked Foden when he came on. He was instrumental in the goal. I feel like I'm looking forward to seeing him get more time this season, because he is like the golden boy in a lot of senses of like the English game in that regard, that he's kind of been always touted on that similar Jack Grealish, Jack Wilshere hype from a long time ago, where people were comparing him to like Spanish counterparts in this kind of technical way. And he looked really good. I liked Cole Palmer as well. I hope he gets on the pitch a bit more. And I'm hoping now, with maybe some of the losses that they've had, and the fact that obviously Bernardo Silva's probably getting on a little bit, that they're going to try and play some of these younger players, because they've got a great academy. Clearly, as we've seen, they've been selling all of them, all of their academy for loads of money over the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to seeing Cole Palmer and Phil Foden get a bit more game time, because they were the most exciting things I really saw. Like Haaland was, he seemed to not be up to his best. Kovacic hasn't. It doesn't seem like he's got that attacking threat yet. So I felt like they were the real bright sparks for City. But before they came on, yeah, you're right. It was they weren't really offering a whole lot against Arsenal.
I thought Kovacic was all right, but again, he played similar to Havertz. I think he played kind of the same way he's been playing at Chelsea. Like, he was very tidy on the ball. He kept it. Close control was good. He dribbled quite a lot, but he didn't make any kind of incisive passes or make any kind of penetration in the game, which I think is going to be the big issue for him, and he's going to need to develop if he wants to like fill Gundogan's boots, because I think that's basically all Gundogan was about: big clutch moments, making impacts in games. And so if he's going to replace him, I think you'll need to see him kind of develop a bit more of a dynamic game for them, I think. But now, yeah, I agree with you.
It was also quite interesting that Kyle Walker was made captain, because all of the rumours you're hearing about him going to Bayern.
He's going to stay though. No, he's going to stay now.
Is that confirmed, or is that?
I've seen Sky and Fabrizio Romano and all the ITK guys saying that he's basically agreed a new contract and he won't be leaving now. So that makes complete sense. Yeah. But yeah, no, I thought Cole Palmer was good. I thought Foden was good when he came on. I think the contentious one on the Arsenal side was, I saw it like you, John. So I didn't think Partey had a great game, but I've seen loads of other people online kind of say that he was great. But I didn't think he was great. I thought he was sloppy at times, and then for like one of the key moments, he got completely rinsed by Foden for the goal. So I know it's possible. Like, Foden's a really quality player, but yeah, I think that's one to monitor as the season starts, to see kind of how Arsenal formulate their midfield, because I think that is the part that Dev said is true. That might take a bit of time to bed and for them to work out which three are the best three in there. Losing Xhaka how they're gonna kind of recalibrate that midfield. So yeah, let's
Same
see,
thing
man.
with
I think
the whole Raya issue as well now.
yeah,
We've
that
got
looks
Raya in
done
as
as
well.
well. But it looks it's interesting. I saw it looks now that he's joining on a loan with a £27 million buy option. So yeah, it will be interesting, that one, because I guess that will depend on whether he gets kind of the first team goalkeeper jersey away from Ramsdale, and then he might want to stay. But if not, he might go back to Brentford or go somewhere else. So it's an interesting one, that one. But yeah, let's go on to the season predictions then, because obviously we've got the Premier League starting in a few days' time, and everyone's pretty much doing this everywhere. Anyone who does football content's doing their season predictions. So I feel like we might as well do ours as well. Dev, considering your impartiality that you might need to show on this, why don't you kind of give a verdict on both of our predictions and kind of let us know what your views are and be the judge, jury, and executioner and tell us basically who's waffling out the is, yeah?
I love that idea.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you might save you a lot of drama. All right. So the categories we'll go through is we'll do winners, top four, Europa League and Conference League, and then we'll do the three teams we think are going to get relegated. And then from a player's perspective, we'll keep it short and sweet and simple. We'll do player of the season, young player of the season, signing of the season, and then flop of the season. So, Johns, I'll do mine first on the team side, and I'll give short explanations as to why I think they are the teams that I've selected. So I think it's a no-brainer, and I think Man City will win the league this season, unfortunately. But what I will say is I have a very strong feeling that Arsenal will do what Liverpool did and push them to the last game of the season. And I think it will be really nip and tuck. I know you guys and a lot of Arsenal fan content creators kind of paint last season to be that way, but really it wasn't. It basically died when you lost to Forest, which was 3 or 4 games before the end. And, you know, the points tally was looking respectable because City basically sacked off the last few games of the season to concentrate on the FA Cup and Champions League. But I think this season, you guys will push them right until the last game, maybe even the last few minutes like Liverpool did. So I think that City will be winners. I think Arsenal will come second, as I said. I think Man U will come third. I think the gap between third and second will be close. I think it won't necessarily be a 3-horse race, but I think we'll be within 6 or 7 points of you guys, and then effectively City as well if they're really close. I think fourth place is the one I've really struggled with because Newcastle, I'm not sold on what they've done, and I don't know if they can juggle both Champions League football and, you know, another charge to top four. I'm not sold on Liverpool. No bias. It's not me hating Scousers. It's just they've sold all of their midfielders and got a couple of midfielders that I'm not completely sold on. So, and then yeah, you've got dark horses like Aston Villa, but I think Liverpool will buy a few midfielders, so I think they'll just sneak top four. But I wouldn't be shocked if it was a new team entering the Champions League in top four. Either Newcastle, not Newcastle, either Aston Villa, who I think have done great work, and Emery, like Dev mentioned earlier, doing an amazing job, or Brighton. I think a lot of people are forgetting how good Brighton were last season and forgetting that De Zerbi's like a weird, like genius savant manager who I think is going to be the next one up that's going to go into that upper echelon of managers. And I think he's going to have a good shot, I think, at getting them in the top four. But I think Liverpool will just about nick it. Europa and Conference, I'm going to go for Villa and Brighton in the Europa League. And I think the Conference League will be Chelsea. I think Pochettino will be able to squeeze them in there just above Spurs because I think even with Harry Kane, I think Spurs are going to have a roller coaster season. And I think they're going to score loads, but I think they concede bucket loads. And I think it will be, just blood pressure in Tottenham was going to be through the roof, I think, this season. And then relegation.
Why don't we pause there quickly before we get onto relegation? Because I think relegation is going to be an interesting one. And I hate to say this because conflict creates or attracts views, but we don't really care about that on this podcast. So I'll say I've got the same winners. So I've got City going to win it. I think they're going to start slow. I think Jack Grealish will probably still be drunk from last season's victory wins. So I think they're going to start really slow, obviously gelling in their new players, but they will still win. And I think it will be by a comfortable margin. I think for Champions League, I think Arsenal will come second, but I don't think it will be close. I think we will be at least high single figures away from them. So possibly like 9-10 points away from them, I think. I think Arsenal and United will be close. I've got you guys coming third. I still think the Ten Hag effect. He's made some decent signings this year. I know they're not what you guys want necessarily, 100%, but I think they'll be good enough to get you a little bit closer, and they definitely improve your team. And I've got Liverpool coming fourth. I think I can't count Salah and Klopp out. I know that Salah's getting on a bit now, and he's been carrying that team for a long time, but I just can't count him out when you've got players like that. And I think he is making some decent signings, so I think they will improve in that regard. And I'm with you. I think Newcastle are going to be a little bit worse this season. I don't like their signings. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of their signings this year. So I don't know if they're going to improve on last year. And obviously adding in European football, I don't know if they've built enough depth now or yet to be able to get them through that while also doing quite well in the Premier League. I've got Villa coming after Newcastle at sixth. I think Villa are going to be crazy. I'm loving the signings that they're making. They've made some really astute signings, and I do think that people previously didn't give Unai enough credit. And then lastly, I've got Chelsea. Again, that may be a bit of a wilder shout, but I've got Chelsea because I think they've made good signings. They haven't gone and gone crazy and done all these like marquee signings like they were doing kind of last year. They've made some good signings from all of the players that I've seen, and the highlights I've seen of those players. I think they will add something good, and I think Pochettino's a good manager, and I think he's going to do something good for them. And I think I can't count them out for long. I agree with you though. Tottenham are going to be absolutely nowhere near it. I think Brighton are going to be a little bit worse this season than they were last year. I do think with Caicedo, I know that De Zerbi's like, oh, we'll just replace Caicedo, it'll be fine. I don't know if it's as easy as that. I know that they've made a lot of great signings, but I don't know if you can keep doing that forever. So I don't know if they will be as good as last year. And it looks like Caicedo is just going to sit on the bench until he gets a move somewhere. So from that regard, yeah, I've got Newcastle, Villa, Chelsea in those slots. So exactly the same as yours.
No. I had Brighton. In instead of Newcastle.
You had Brighton.
Yeah. I've got Newcastle dropping out of Europe altogether.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to juggle it, and I haven't bought into the signings either. So, Dev, what do you make of our... are we waffling, or do you think Sky Sports News is in our future? Do you think we've made good predictions?
Look, I thought Sky Sports News was in your future before I even joined you guys here. I tell you, I kid you not. And nothing I have seen today has made me change my view on that. I just want to know, where's the respect for Tottenham, man? Where's the respect for Chelsea, man? I mean, I know a lot of supporters of a lot of football clubs across the country. And I think, Ange Postecoglou and his boys, and I think Maurizio Pochettino, and a lot of the Blues fans, I think they're going to be wondering, maybe why they've been discounted from this. Give me your views on that.
Dev, here's the perspective. Yeah, I think Chelsea will be good this season, but the turnover of players plus new coach with drastically different style, I think if they get Europa League, they've had a great season. And I think I've just put them in Conference League, which I don't think they'll be a million miles away. I wouldn't be shocked if they got the Europa League. But I think at the moment, looking at what they're doing, even if they got Caicedo in, they don't have a striker. Or they've got Jackson, I know the young lad, but they haven't got a proven striker, shall we say. So I think
it's also a lot of injuries. They've already got Nkunku. He just wasn't it announced yesterday that he's out for a while now again?
Yeah, 4 months. Yeah.
Fofana's out again as well. So I feel like those are two. They're supposed to be pretty crucial players for them. So I feel like that worries me, and maybe that will affect it. And then adding to it, yeah, the bedding in. We saw it with not to compare too much and go into hyperbole, but Nottingham Forest last year. When you buy that many new players, it's not always easy to gel them in quickly. I think Pochettino, if anyone can, he can. But I just think the league is too strong elsewhere for them to really pip it. But I wouldn't be surprised the year after if they were top four again, or like challenging for the title again.
I agree. I think they're going to have a sharp ascension. I think, but I think it just won't be possible in year one. Like I think from year two, Poch will get a few more players in, and I think they're going to follow a similar trajectory. I think than Spurs did when Poch took over. I think they just missed top four right in the first season with Poch, and then they got it, and they were consistently in their title challenges, and Poch did his magic. So I think that's coming, but I don't think it's happening in year one. And Tottenham, I have no reason to hate Tottenham, right? Johns does, obviously, but I don't. And I live just around the corner from them. I've got no problem with them, really, but I think their transfer deals haven't bridged the gap. And I think the problem they had last year was mostly in defence, and I think they've bought one young Mickey van der Ven defender. I don't think that's the solution. So if they were to sell Harry Kane and buy two world-class defenders and get, a young striker to fill his boots, I'd say they might have a shot. But I think most likely what will happen is they'll keep Kane and probably not do anything substantial in defence. And so they'll score bucket loads, but they'll be just as shambolic in defence, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dev.
Yeah, I think with Spurs, I think they're definitely in the market for at least one more defender. From what I understand, and they have picked up a young defender from Blackburn Rovers as well, who's probably won a bit more for the future. I still think there are sort of defenders there that may not have a future, the likes of Japhet Tanganga, etc. And I don't think the discussion around Clement Longley is completely dead either with Barcelona. So I think that there could be some movement there to reinforce the spine. But going back to your predictions, I think there's two other things I'd probably say is I think the one real difference is it's the tune question, because one of you's got Newcastle in Europe and one of you's got Newcastle dropping out altogether. And I think if the Punjabi villains were listening to this and didn't hear Unai Emery and Aston Villa involved in this top 4, top 5, top 6 conversation, I think they'd have something to say about that. Are they in there? Both of yours?
I've got them
both
at
of us.
6.
Oh, okay. All right.
I've got them at 5th, 5th or 6th. I think them and Brighton are going to be the two non-traditional top 6 teams that are just going to. I think I wouldn't be surprised if my team caught spankings off both of them.
I think they're going to do upsets. I think they're the team that are going to be the boogeyman and beat a couple of big teams. And I think, again, they're going to have an issue with bedding in someone like Pau Torres and some of their newer signings, of course. But I liked their team last year. I thought it was definitely underachieving before Unai Emery came in. And now I like it even more. I just think you are being a bit harsh to Newcastle because, yes, Europe is a lot, but they still have a lot of great players like Isak, Guimaraes. They've got a lot of really good players, and we've forgotten that they had technically the best defense by stats in the league last year. So I feel like you are being a bit harsh to say they're not even going to come like 7th. You've got them coming like 8th and below. That's a bit.
I'm going to have to make a confession. I didn't used to hate Newcastle, but from what I've seen of all of their Amazon stuff and Eddie Howe giving it all the big un about Ten Hag and stuff, it's starting to develop deep in my heart where I'm starting to have like a bit of an anti-Newcastle vibe going on. But it's not purely from hate. It is also just genuinely from the fact that I think playing in the Champions League, Newcastle are going to be so invested in it. You see how their crowd gets up for it. You see how passionate their players are. I already think last season, being involved in some of the cups and like playing those extra games, going deep in the Carabao Cup, playing lots of extra games already kind of caused them to have a bit of a topsy-turvy period over the winter period. And so I think playing Champions League, I wouldn't be shocked, if they went into the quarterfinals or something like that of the Champions League. I'm not saying they're going to get battered in every competition, but I think the distraction will be that little difference that will drop them out of contention. But bear in mind, I don't think from 5th to 8th there's going to be a huge points differential. I think they'll be close. So I don't think they will be far. And I wouldn't be shocked if they got in. I think out of the list of teams that I named, I think Newcastle would be the one that could easily get back into top 4 or at least Europa League again. But I think looking at what they've done right now, they sold St. Maximum, got in Harvey Barnes, got Livramento to back up Trippier, and they got
Tonali.
Tonali. Like, I like Livramento, but if he's backing up Trippier, he's not going to play much. Let's be real, because Trippier was amazing last season.
I heard some
Uh,
rumours they might try and play in left back though.
yeah, if they're playing left back, that could work. Yeah,
It's
and
an
I like
improvement on Dan Burn, I think.
Yeah, I really like Tino Livramento as well. So I think he's a really good prospect. But I think if they put him or Trippier left back, I think you lose a bit of that defensive solidity that Burn brought. So I wouldn't be shocked if they conceded more as a result of that. And then I think Barnes is not definitely an upgrade on Max and Maximum. I think he might be slightly better, but that's not like a huge upgrade. And we're going to get to flops and conversations around, individual players later. I'm going to give a hint. I don't rate Tonali, and I think that 70 million, they've just gone and bought someone, like Sam Allardyce used to say, with a fancy name, and it could be Allardyce, and he'd get a bit more money. There might be a Sandro Townsend somewhere playing for Port Vale or something like that. They could have bought him for a couple of million. Like, I don't think they realise the player they're buying for the amount of money they spent. I think he's one of those players that would have been amazing in Serie A, and I don't think he'll, spoiler alert, I don't think he'll do well in the Prem. So I think they're not going to make a jump on what they did last season, and I think the other teams have improved around them, and I think they could easily take a slide. But yeah, that's my thoughts. But yeah, you can try and stoke some more some more fans to get on my back, Dev. But yeah, there's no way I'm changing my mind on Newcastle. I think they're not going to make it.
Look, I think the other thing is it's so difficult right now with so many days of the window left open, because it's so completely up for grabs with most of the teams in the top half of the Premier League, or most of the teams that you think are likely to finish in the top half of the Premier League. There's so much business to be done, whether that's Liverpool, whether that's Chelsea, whether that's Spurs, whether that's, I think probably the team that maybe looks most settled and content with their transfer business is probably Manchester City. Once they've got, one or two more wrapped up, that's them done. And I think, going back to your other point about missing out on Jurriën Timber, I know it was a little while ago, but and Kyle Walker potentially staying on at Manchester City, I think does that not all but confirm that João Cancelo is on the outer, and João Cancelo is probably on his way out. And if he's on his way out, well, then also where does he go, and then where does Benjamin Pavard go as well? Because I think that's another, a top class sort of high profile defender who's been there, done it, battle tested, who could very well, end up in the Premier League, which I think would only add value to the Premier League, and I think a player people would look forward to seeing how he could potentially get on.
Yeah, no, Pavard. I know Pavard was linked to City when Kyle Walker there was talk of him going to Bayern. I've also seen him linked to Man U now, obviously off the back of Maguire going. So I'm not against Pavard, but I think I like the idea, and I said this to Jonts when we were linked to Kim Min Jae. I like the idea of us getting a younger centre back to come in. So the links with like Todibo and the Tapsoba and stuff like that are kind of more the profile I think that United would be kind of better off getting.
It's a shame you couldn't get your hands on old Disasi.
No, I'm happy that we didn't get him.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't watched him extensively, but the comps I've seen of him, I don't think he would fit the way that Ten Hag's trying to play. He's like more of a traditional big centre back, dominating kind of more of like, not in a horrible way, more in the Maguire mold. So if you sell Maguire and you get Disasi, you're just getting a slightly younger French version of him. You're not really changing.
I feel like that's so harsh, but okay.
No, but Maguire's a full international. He's a good player. He's been sold for 30 million. It's not the worst. I know the fans all think Maguire's useless now, but I think going down a different route to Debo's, the Tapsobas, the younger, more mobile, quicker, good on the ball defender is what Ten Hag wants. So I don't think Pavard would fit in with that too. I just think age profile would be kind of, I don't know if that would fit in, but I think he'd be good to come to the Prem for sure. Like let's get into the relegation teams then. I think Sheffield United are on a prayer to nothing. Like they're selling all of their players and they're not buying anyone. So I think sadly they're doing the elevator journey. They're going up, just straight come right back down again. I think they're certain to go down, unfortunately. I think sadly Luton will also go down. I think they're a good story, and they'll rumble a few teams at the stadium, but I don't think they'll have the quality to stay up. And then I think the third and final one, it might be a bit of recency bias, but seeing this stuff going on at Wolves, it's completely shaken my confidence in that team and that club, because I think Lopetegui was amazing last season. The job he did, he was up there with Emery in doing a mid-season job, coming in, saving them. They played all right football. They did a really good job to get out of the predicament they were in. But for him to leave, and all this stuff I'm hearing about them not having money to buy anyone because of FFP, selling Jimenez for I think like under 6 million to Fulham, selling Neves to Saudi Arabia, a bunch of players like contracts expired. I think Traore left, Moutinho left, and now the manager's left, and I think they've got Gary O'Neill. I was talking to you earlier, Dev, and you mentioned how good he is as a youth coach. That's probably their saving grace. But I think the stability Gary O'Neill got during the season when he took over last season at Bournemouth, and the faith that was shown in him when it was a bit risky and he was losing a few games, I think I wouldn't be shocked if Gary O'Neill got fired within the first half of the season if things didn't go well straight away. So I think Wolves are going to be my third team going down. Sadly, got nothing against them, but I think it looks like they're the crazy gang in this Premier League season. What do you think, Johns?
So I've also got Sheffield United. They've lost loads of their players. A lot of them were on loan anyway, so a lot of them have just gone back to their own clubs, and they haven't been able to replace any of them, or they just haven't replaced any of them. I've got Luton as well. I would love to see Luton stay up because they're quite close to where I am, so I'd be able to go and see a bit more Premier League football. That would be nice. But I don't know if they've necessarily got the quality to stay up. And I think quality at the end of the day doesn't lie. And I think they will unfortunately have to go down. And I've got a shout in there because I don't want to be controversial too much, but I have a really weird feeling that Fulham are going to go down. And the reason I say that is because they did really well last season, like obviously massively overachieved. But I don't know also if they've got the quality to stay up, because it looks like a lot of their, some of their better, or not a lot, but some of their better players, like Mitrovic, for example, aren't super happy. I feel like there's going to be a bit of a calm down after last season. I know that they have still got really good quality in certain places. I still think Leno's a top tier keeper. Paulinho obviously was one of the best DMs in the league last season. He was really, really good. I feel like there's going to be maybe a slight deflation after last season. And I don't know if they've made enough moves to improve their team significantly. I know that they looked into, obviously they've got Jimenez, but he obviously wasn't great last season. I know that, is it also Calvin Bassey as well that they've looked into, or that they've purchased? So he could be a good one, but I just have a weird feeling that Fulham are going to do the opposite of what they did last season. And that's a weird shout. I don't know what it is. It's almost like a premonition coming to me. But I just have a feeling that Fulham are going to be the ones. I did struggle a little bit, though. I thought it could be Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, Fulham. I had a feeling that Crystal Palace won't be great this season either, but I've gone with Fulham, and I'm going to look like an idiot at the end of the season, I'm sure.
No, I see the logic, though. What do you think, Dev? Who do you think? Do you think either one of us are on point, or do you think we're both being harsh on Fulham and Wolves?
I just think it's so difficult, that third pick. I can see, and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of other supporters, and to be fair, most people have gone with Luton and have gone with Sheffield United. And look, everyone loves an underdog, everyone loves a fairy tale story. Let's see if one of those two teams can stay up. Interesting to know that you're both fully behind Vinny Kompany and Burnley, and they've not come up in the conversation. And look, that you could make there were other teams that struggled. Everton struggled very badly last season, and there probably one or two more that can probably might be in that mix. And again, Forest have also got a lot to prove this season with a coach with a similar profile, I suppose, to Gary O'Neill, in Steve Cooper, who himself a former Liverpool youth team coach, obviously then having gone to Swansea and sort of gone around the houses to get to kind of where he's had to get to. And I think with Gary O'Neill as well, positive trajectory that he's on, a very highly regarded, one of those, I don't know, new generation of young English up-and-coming coaches. He seems like the kind of guy that you want to do well. You want to see him do well for the future of the English game. You want to see English managers managing, at the top level. And I think that's the only thing that might be Eddie Howe's saving grace for you. You got to remember that Eddie Howe's flying the flag for English managers, and he don't give him too much stick, even if he gives you
no.
a bit.
I support English managers. But
It's
Eddie Howe's
tough.
he's been on a waffling spree. So I'm not his big fan.
Dev,
right
you
now.
should ask Ant about bloody what's his name from Aston Villa, the Jamaica international. What's his name again? That you hate.
Oh,
just because
yes.
he had a beef with Lissandro. Anthony now just hates
From the
him
Bundesliga,
with a passion.
Yeah. It's okay. I saw a meme.
Bailey. Yeah,
I saw a meme. I'm not going to mention his name. I saw a meme about him and just how he went to Bayer Leverkusen, was playing amazing, and then they bought Moussa Diaby, and Moussa Diaby took his spot, kicked him out. He had to leave. He went to Aston Villa, and now he's at Villa. Moussa Diaby comes, and you know what's going to happen. So see you later, Bailey. I have no remorse for him. He can go and play in the Championship.
the levels of bias, unbelievable.
Yeah, no, hate him. But no, I hear what you're saying though, and I hope Gary O'Neill does well. I hope I'm talking purely out of my backside with Wolves, because I actually think he got treated terribly at Bournemouth. I think to sack him, considering what he did, keeping them up with a tiny budget, and against the kind of big juggernaut teams that were competing for survival. Leeds went down. Leeds are a huge team. Bournemouth, staved them off. Everton were in that mix, and Bournemouth, I think, finished above them as well. So what Gary O'Neill did, he's not just a caretaker manager who Ollie's at the wheel. Kind of did it for a short period of time. I think
quality at his disposal too. I know
Yeah.
that they've lost a couple of players, but they were packing in their team with really good kind of overseas talent previously, and I still do like a lot of their players, even without Jimenez and yeah.
It's just a gelling thing. I just don't know if I think he was able to kind of get the troops going at Bournemouth. I think there was a bit more of a British core. Wolves is not really that. Like, it's a Portuguese core. Like, they've had Portuguese managers, Spanish managers pretty much ever since they've kind of had the Chinese takeover and worked a lot with Jorge Mendes or whatever. So I think the only thing that might save them is that he might be able to help them wheel and deal, and they'll get a few players in and get some players in there with some leadership and spirit that Gary O'Neill can kind of lean on. But I think the biggest thing, Dev, to just the teams that you mentioned, I think the key thing that's consistent with all of them is I think we buy into the managers. So even though I don't think Everton are a great team at the moment, I believe in Sean Dyche. I believe Dyche ball will keep them up. And with Company, I don't think Burnley have got a great team either. They've made a couple of cute signings, but the stuff I've seen around Company, he seems like like what everyone thought Lampard and Gerrard were as managers. But in reality, he seems like that guy that could really be the good player, the great player that becomes a top quality coach. From what I've seen of him, I think he's got a great shout. So I think
he's
it's
very
more
cerebral.
around. Yeah,
he's definitely a thinking manager as well. Not necessarily like a getting the lads up. He looks like he's a proper thinking.
It looks like he's got both. From what I've seen, it looks like he's got both. The training room, behind the scenes stuff at Anderlecht and at Burnley, it looks like he is a thinker, but he also gets stuck in. So I think he's a real good balance, and I think Burnley will do well, and I don't think they'll have problems with relegation. And considering his ex-City legend, I actually wish him well. He's one of the few City lads that I hope he does a good job.
I think the thing with Company is he's got the medals, right? He's been there, he's done it. He's done it on the pitch, and I think it's absolutely right what you say about being cerebral. I mean, he's actually a textbook example in many ways of how a player should, immerse themselves into a football club. It was a big surprise, I've got to be honest. I think at the time when he moved from Anderlecht to Manchester City, at that time he had his pick of clubs. He did not have to go to Manchester for whatever reason. He felt that was the best fit for him at the time. But he wasn't just content with, immersing himself inside the football club. He was also doing his degree. He was actually studying, and this wasn't right towards the end. decided to do his coaching badges, he was sort of doing this. He's very entrepreneurial as well. So yeah, he's absolutely somebody who, and I've got to be honest. I mean, I absolutely love to see a black manager in the Premier League. God bless black managers in the
100%,
Premier League. Let's see
100%.
some more of them, because when you
Exactly.
make up 30, 35, 40% of Premier League starting lineups and you cut, black managers cannot get a job at the top level, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with that system. And yeah, absolutely. On that basis, would love nothing more than to see Vincent Kompany, who, you're probably right, Anthony, is probably the most popular captain of a club that's won lots of stuff. I mean, when I think of the captains, they're really polarizing figures, you know, and not a lot of, you know, there was a lot of people who weren't too keen on John Terry, weren't too keen on Steven Gerrard, weren't too keen on other captains of big clubs. But actually, Vincent Kompany is the one that I suppose most supporters really quite like, you know, guilty pleasure, if you like, even for a United fan like Anthony. Unbelievable scenes here today.
Yeah, I still remember. That's a really good. I still remember seeing. I think it was leaked out of the dressing room. Like Sir Alex Ferguson did like a planning, like he was planning out, mapping out his future Man U team, and the centre backs to come in behind Vidic, Ferdinand, and that crop. He had written down Gerard Piqué / Vincent Kompany. And when I think of, and I saw that afterwards, after the fact, all the years later, I thought, damn, why didn't we get Vincent Kompany? Because even though Piqué went on to be an amazing player, I just think character-wise, Kompany was the one who had the longevity, who had the leadership, who I think would have been an amazing player to play with or take over from Rio. And yeah, I've heard loads of stories, you know, backing up what you said about him buying into the community and basically becoming an adopted Mancunian when he was there. So yeah, I've got a lot of time for him. And yeah, as you said, you need to see more ethnically diverse and black managers in football, especially in the Premier League. That it's just something that we need to address. So yeah, we're rooting for you, mate, despite the Man City ties. Let's get into the players bit then. I'll try and go through mine real quick. Player of the season, easy. I think it'll be Haaland. I think it will be a given because he's going to get like a gajillion goals. I think he'll probably break his own record and probably hit 40 Premier League goals. I think, to be honest, he kind of died down and took it easy on everyone in the back end of last season. And I think if he needed to go to the wire with Arsenal in a title challenge, I think you'd probably see him score more goals. So I think Haaland will be the player of the season. I think young player of the season, this is when this comes in and the bias comes in. I'm going for Alejandro Garnacho because I think he's going to have a breakout season for us, and I think I wouldn't be shocked to see Sancho ride the bench for a big portion of this season. Not only because maybe he hasn't been playing up to the level, but because Garnacho is basically undroppable off that side, and I think he's going to be a big standout player. I think there's a good chance he has a similar-ish season to the one Martinelli had last season for us on the left-hand side. And I think if he does, I think he's in with a good shout of winning that. I think signing of the season, Johnson's going to be happy because I think the Dutch guy that they have just purchased will be the signing of the season. I think Jurriën Timber, for 35 million or whatever it was, is an unbelievable snip. Considering we were probably going to have to pay about 60 million for him last season, Man United tax, I think 35 million. I wouldn't be surprised if he took Ben White's spot at right back. I wouldn't be surprised if he took Zinchenko's spot at left back. You know, I don't rate Zinchenko super highly. Johnson knows this. So I think he's going to be a real top quality player for you. And I think looking at your defence with Saliba, Gabriel, White and Timber, that's a really, really quality defence. And I think it's one of the few defences that can go up there with, you know, City's line of centre backs that are all 7 foot tall. So I think Timber will be the young player of this signing of the season. Sorry, and no surprises. Flop of the season: Sandro Townsend. I called him earlier. Tonali. I think 70 million. I think, you know, he just looked distressed going into the Newcastle changing room and gym from that video I saw. So I think he's not going to be able to enjoy Newcastle to the full extent, and I think he's not the player they need. He's not the player they think they're getting, and I wouldn't be shocked if he was loaned back to Serie A in January or, you know, sold for half the price at the end of the season. So I think that's mine. What do you think, Johns?
Annoyingly, it's exactly the same as mine. So I'm going to change it up a little bit, and I'm going to get my fishing rod out. I've got Haaland as player of the season. I just think that award is very heavily weighted towards goals, and he's going to be the one that gets the most of them. And I think in that team, as we've kind of in our predictions, we've got City winning the league. I don't think they'll do the treble again necessarily, but they're still going to be winning things. And I guess the only maybe saving grace that Haaland doesn't get it is maybe people get a bit sick of it, a bit sick of giving it all to City, and maybe somebody else gets it. I don't know, maybe Rashford, maybe hopefully Saka, hopefully somebody else. But that sounds harsh to Haaland. He seems like a great geezer. He's clearly very, very talented. But I mean, he's just smashing in goals, and it kind of leaves it for like undebatable to a point. For young player of the season, again, I've got Garnacho. I just think out of the top teams that we've got here, he's really the only one that I still class in that really like young player of the season space that's going to get a lot of game time. I think with City, none of the players that I think are young, really fit into this category. And I don't think they're going to get that many minutes. I think at Arsenal, we've got a lot of young players, but I think because of last season, they're not necessarily going to get lumped into the young category. It's almost as if the young category needs to be people that are really getting their first shine in the league, maybe. And I think like Saka, Martinelli, all of those kinds of players have been playing for a long time now. People have seen them a lot. They've been really good already. I think they're going to be more in contention for player of the season and a little bit less in contention for young player of the season.
What about Saliba?
I still think people are going to lump him into the kind of more of the player of the season and not call him young player of the season. I still think the eyes are going to be on the teenagers. And I think Garnacho, I think he's still a teenager, isn't he? Yeah. So I think, he'll probably stand out from that crowd. I would love to see Saliba get it, but again, I also think the bias will typically go towards more attacking players, unfortunately. I don't know if Saliba will get it for that reason. Signing this season, I've got Timber as well, just because I think from that game that I just saw, and I don't want to go too crazy off of one game, he just looks super versatile, very confident, and also quite level-headed, which in a defender is really, really important to me, particularly when you see a lot of, our defenders, even like Gabriel, for example, in the centre-back position. Before last season and even last season, he did have a tendency to make mistakes, and it's sometimes because he gets a little bit crazy, gets a little bit ahead of himself, tries things that he maybe shouldn't. And I like the look of Timber in the fact that he looks quite similar to Saliba in that most of the time he makes really good decisions. And I think that's probably one of the most important parts of a defender in my mind. And then for flop of the season, I was going to put Tonali, but I'm going to change it just to rattle. And I'm going to put Onana.
Of course.
I'm going to put Onana. And I know that that's probably harsh, but it's all about perception for this award. And I think the way that he plays is quite risky. I like the way that he plays, though, and I think he's a great character, and I hope he does well for you. Unfortunately, I don't wish you guys well that much, but he looks like a good keeper, and I like to see, again, on that subject, I like to see black goalkeepers as well, because it's typically a position that has been very, very heavily weighted towards like kind of English, Jordan Pickford type of lads. I'd like to see Onana get in there, and I like the fact that he's your number one. He's got a big character on him. I remember, was it in the World Cup where he just said, I don't like the way you lot play football, I'm going home. And I like that he's got kind of the balls to go and do that. So I do like him, but I think as a goalkeeper, you are very susceptible to very large mistakes, as we saw with De Gea last year. And I think the way that he plays particularly is also very risky. And I feel like there's going to be a couple of clangers. And I think, generally speaking, that's going to like stand out. Unfortunately, as a goalkeeper, you will stand out in that way when you do anything negative. And I just don't want to say there's the exact same answers as you, so screw it. I'm putting Onana in there. Sorry, mate.
Fishing, absolutely fishing. You could have come up with a better one than that. Dev, what do you think, though? Do you think we're being? Do you think there's anyone we're missing, maybe from the player of the season, the young player of the season shouts?
I've got a colleague who's a Brighton. I've got a couple of colleagues, quite a few colleagues who are Brighton fans actually at Sky Sports Towers, and I'm not going to reveal which one it was, but I was having a conversation with him about just how exciting it is for Brighton and Hove Albion as a football club, and that evolution going from the Goldstone Ground to the Amex Stadium to going to via Graham Potter and buying and selling Cucurella and now De Zerbi and heading into Europe. And so we actually spoke about one of the players who I think is a really shrewd acquisition for Brighton is Mahmoud Daoud in central midfield. Mo Daoud, who's come on a free, right? So I mean, you know, if we're having a signing of the season conversation, a guy who doesn't cost anything, I don't know. Let's see if you can get him fit. I think dislocated shoulder is from what I recall, he had quite a couple of odd injuries that really stunted his development. They've never really quite forced his way back into the Dortmund side. As quite often happens with players coming to the end of their contracts, they tend to actually find their way in the starting lineup to right down towards that tail end. But he obviously had made his decision to leave the club and seek a fresh challenge elsewhere. Again, somebody who had offers, I believe, from across Europe, and for whatever reason plumped for Brighton. So yeah, I wonder if Mo Daoud might be in that equation. And I know quite a few Liverpool fans as well. I think they might be quite surprised that neither of you said Alexis McAllister in the signing of the season. But one player that they have been, or one or two players that they've been telling me to watch out for is Curtis Jones, who's done really well, for England under 21s, and his game has sort of come on a little bit. And Liverpool are very short in midfield, and on that basis alone, you'd fully expect Curtis Jones to get a lot of game time next season. And I think there might have even been some suggestion that he could play as a 6, as well as an 8, as well as a 10, as well as playing off the left. I mean, he's a really versatile young player. And Ben Doak apparently has been really, really good in pre-season for Liverpool as well. And, if it's a long, hard season, if there's 10 or 15 minutes left to go in the game and you're looking for an impact sub, that kid's a greyhound. He's a racehorse. So yeah, maybe he's a real wild card, dark horse, young player option.
I actually want to put another one into the hat for signing the season too. I feel like this one might have gone under the radar as well. I think João Pedro.
No, I was about to say him. We saw him at Watford. He's class, and apparently for them in the friendlies, he's been amazing as well. So I wouldn't be shocked. You could be right, Dev. This is what I'm saying about Brighton and De Zerbi, though. Like, I know what John's is saying about, the constant churn of players. At some point, it's not going to work. But looking at who they've got in, looking at the few players that they've lost, looking at that manager, I've bought in to Brighton doing really well again this season, honestly. Like, I'm not going to say they're one of my, second teams, but because they've spanked us a few times and I've not liked it. But the Hood, I think, is a great shout for free. I think he could slot into the McAllister role. I'm not buying the McAllister hype. Sorry, Dev. I'm not buying that. Sorry. I don't think that was a great signing. I like the Curtis Jones shout, though. I think he could be he was on fire at the back end of the season. And I feel like he'll do well in their midfield. Actually, I want to hate Curtis Jones, but I can't. I think he looks a good player, and I really like. Who we haven't mentioned though, who might be up for young player is Evan Ferguson for Brighton. I think he looked really good back end of last season before he got injured, and I think I'm just totally on the Brighton train. I think they're going to be good this season, and I think they've got a bunch of shouts for young player signing of the season. Not maybe quite player of the season. I don't think they'll be in those combos because I think Johnson's right. It normally goes to top scorers, title winning players, stuff like that. And I don't think they'll quite make that level. But yeah, I like Brighton a lot. I think they could do really well.
And I just think to complete the Brighton loving, I mean, they've got the ultimate club man, the Premier League legend, the man who won't go away, James Milner. I mean, if you want to teach those young players something and get players acclimatized and adapted to the rigors of the Premier League, and he's someone who clearly they think's got a huge future away from the field and potentially in coaching should he want to go down that road. And he probably will get that hands-on experience. That's probably one of the reasons why he's plumped for Brighton, the fact that he will actually get perhaps what Jordan Henderson's been promised by Steven Gerrard, the actual opportunity to really, hands-on and really get stuck into that coaching journey a little bit earlier than perhaps you might expect. So, yeah, I mean, lot to like about Brighton and Hove Albion at the moment.
Yeah, you're making it really hard, though, with all your Liverpool and ex-Liverpool shouts, man. You're making it so hard for me to
I thought he was going to say Danny Welbeck. I was about to say, go on, Danny Welbeck, class.
I was thinking Lewis Dunk. I was thinking loads of different players. And then when you said Milner, I was like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And to be fair, I don't really mind, Milner. He's a grafter. He's had an unbelievable career to play that long. He's still probably one of the few players that, puts a shift in and runs and probably gets, 12, 13 kilometers a game, even at his age. So, yeah, I hear you, though, on that shout. I think he probably will integrate into a coaching role at Brighton. That's maybe something that's been promised to him. And they've
He
got a
gives
nice
me
core.
like Clarence Seedorf vibes. It doesn't matter if he's 35 or if he's 25. He's equally as fit regardless. And I think that's a great thing to instill when you've got a team like Brighton who have got quite a lot of young players. One that we didn't talk about is another new signing they've got. Is it Verbruggen?
Oh, the goalie, yeah.
Who looks like he's... I mean, I've only seen him on FIFA, but he's always quite highly touted on that game. So I know that they've got Steele or whatever else, that's their number one now, but they've obviously lost Sanchez. And I think he's a good, really, really young goalkeeper. So if he gets game time, he could be not in with a shout for young player of the season, because goalkeepers typically don't get that. But I would like to see him play. I think I've heard some good things about him, so I think that's another good signing. They've made quite a lot. You're now making me regret my predictions. God,
I told you, man. Brighton, they're just when you dig into them, they're just, and I just love how they're sticking it to Chelsea as well. The Caicedo stuff, like, I just all round, what a beautiful club. There's so many great things to say about them. But yeah, all right, cool.
And can I just ask on the last point? I know we got to move on, but Gvardiol. So I had him clear as one of the people I was going to think about for flop of the seasons because of the price tag and because of the fact that he might not even actually get into the team. We've seen Pep do that before, where they don't necessarily always start and play 100% the whole time. He is a young player. I know he looked really good at the World Cup and he's looked really good in general. I'm just putting it out there. Dev, what do you reckon of Gvardiol? How good do you think he's going to be? How much could he even improve what is almost an impenetrable defence?
It's one of those where I think, Manchester City have done all right, because I think all the indications were that they could have been paying even more for one of the world's most sought-after central defenders. And look, it's great to be in that position where, the revenue's coming in. City have won the lot, right? So you could afford to pick and choose and buy who you want. And yeah, I can't think of a club in world football that really wouldn't want a player of that ilk within their ranks. And yeah, I mean, it just adds to what's already a frightening team. And look, going back to Kovacic as well, I think Kovacic will come good as well. I mean, I think he's got the skill set. And I just think, like you said, pre-season, they've been a bit rusty. They've not had much game, and certainly not as a big collective group. They're going to get better as the season goes along. And yeah, they do look like a frightening proposition, don't they, this year?
Oh, man. You're making this pod so hard. With all the Liverpool chat and City chat, you're making me depressed. But I agree with you, though. And to counter Johnson's point, I think City have this thing where they buy players for a lot of money. They don't necessarily make the team, or they come in and out constantly, or they don't play amazing, but they somehow evade media pressure and scrutiny. So look at Grealish. I know that's also the English, he's the poster boy of England type situation as well. But I think even if he doesn't get in the team loads, or, he's in and out, or he doesn't play amazingly off the bat, I don't think he'll have flop of the season tags put on him. I think he might deserve it, but I think he'll evade it because I think he'll play enough. He'll look decent enough. And City will probably go on to win most things. So, that's
Pep does a very good job
net.
of protecting those players, right? He does a very good job of just protecting his team in general. And I think maybe Calvin Phillips is the only one where we've seen a bit of, him get a bit
even
of flack,
him,
but yeah.
Even him, winning protects you as well. And they win a lot.
Yeah.
So they get to shield their players from that kind of scrutiny. So, now people are saying Grealish is a bargain for 100 million. And last season, I thought he was, the worst transfer in Premier League history, potentially. But, these things change. But anyway, yeah, that's really good. Good shouts. We'll come back to this later on in the season and see how shockingly we've done with these shouts. And also, maybe we'll also come back at the end of the transfer window when it's closed, and we'll give ourselves a chance to modify them slightly off the back of any more kind of dealings.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Fulham. I might change it. Please don't hate me.
Why? I don't think the Fulham shout's that crazy. I think they are going to have it harder this season. There's been a lot of movement, and I think second seasons are hard for people to stay up. So I think, that they will have a battle on their hands. But anyway, let's get into the proper personal stuff now, Dev. Now that we've waffled for an hour about Man United, Arsenal, and the season, it is South Asian Heritage Month right now, and you talked about backing some of the work that we were doing and the stuff around supporting East and Southeast Asians in football. And I have to be honest, man, you've got it the wrong way around. Like, we are so, kind of on board and want to support as much as we can with South Asians in football because of all of the amazing work that you've done, man. And I really want you to kind of share with the audience a little bit about how you got into football journalism, football as an industry, and all the amazing stuff that you're doing.
I'll give you the concise. I won't bore you too much with the details because every time I go on one of these panels, they always ask me about my story. And I always think I spend up so much time talking about my story that I never actually get to the good bit in the story that I really want to tell you about because I'm too busy telling you how I got there. But look, eventually I got to a point in my life. I always wanted to be involved in the big game, right? I used to dream of being a football commentator when I was a kid, a radio commentator. I always used to talk fast. And for me, radio commentary was the real art, right? If there was a good commentator, you were listening, you could see what was happening on that pitch. And so, yeah, that's kind of always what I wanted to do. Of course, it was a completely ridiculous idea, it seemed at the time. And, kids like me just quite frankly didn't do that kind of thing and weren't always readily encouraged to do that kind of thing. And unless you've got a background or people in the family who've kind of trodden that path, it becomes very difficult, to do something like that. And so, I mean, I just thought it was, nothing more than a pipe dream, really, being involved in football, if you like, even though I absolutely loved the game, just like you guys do, just like any kid. And that's what I've loved, I think, about being here with you guys the most, that, we could just talk all night about this. And that's the best thing. And that's the beauty of football, right? Brings people together, a different language. And I guess, I did lots of different things with my life. People talk about Brendan Batson, Laurie Cunningham, Cyril Regis, 3 degrees. Well, look, I've actually got 3 degrees. I've actually done lots of different things in my life. I've worked in the hotel business. My dad had a restaurant once upon a time, and I used to dream of running that and running it my way. And naturally, my dad wanted a better life for me than the old catering industry, which, yeah, but eventually I just sold motorcycles, which was great fun. Those were the days when, I had nothing to worry about. And it was actually when I was selling motorcycles, a guy walked in and wanted to buy, a bike for Christmas and said, look, I want 3 helmets. I want 3 this, 3 that. And I'd never seen a guy like it in my life. I was like, what do you need 3 of everything for? And he wanted it as a Christmas present for him and his kids to just have a mess around on. We talked about football. We actually spoke about Arsenal, and I mentioned Arsene Wenger, and he said, yeah, I know him. And, comment went totally above my head. He gave me his card. I left it on my desk. A few days later, I had a look at it. And I Googled him, and I realized that he'd represented half of the England team. And he'd represented this striker who wasn't, really that much talked about at the time. He'd had a few difficult loan spells, one at Leicester, I think, one at Norwich, I think, maybe even one at Leyton Orient. Turns out that was a guy called Harry Kane. And now Harry Kane is a completely different proposition altogether. It was little things like that. It was seeing Manish Bhasin, seeing my good friend Dharmesh Sheth, who once upon a time I used to watch on the TV just like the next man, given his old transfer updates. He was so good at it then. He's even better than that now. Seeing those guys, combination of different factors in my life, I just didn't want to have any regrets. I didn't want to die wondering. I'm not going to die wondering. And so I found a course, an MA in sports journalism. Somehow the course lead took me on. He was a guy called Dr. Dara Minogue, and I don't think Dara Minogue realized at the time that he was about to change sports journalism as we know it in this country. And yeah, I guess the rest is history. I was the oldest guy in my class. I was the first one to get out at Sky Sports News. I've really I had a lot of life experience. I've done a lot of stuff in my life. I've seen a lot of things in my life. And actually, that's what's put me in the best stead for it, I think, for this kind of thing. And you get into a place like Sky. It was the first sort of paid journalism I got, which is unbelievable if you think about it. I mean, most people have to do the hard yards, I suppose, or, no one's journey is the same. It's not a linear journey. My journey, I just happened to get that break, and felt like I really had to prove myself every single day. And 9 years, 11 months, and 21 days later, I still feel like I got to prove myself. And that's because I've got high standards. I've got high expectations of myself. I don't need anyone to put pressure on me, because I put a huge amount of pressure on myself, and used to do the jobs that people hated. Once upon a time, believe it or not, women's football wasn't the big thing back in the day. It's grown exponentially. It's grown massively. It's a huge opportunity, not just for women, but for men. And of course, there are real issues within the women's game, as we know, as documented by Karen Carney in the Independent Women's Football Review, ordered by government, recommendation number 4, which is called for the Football Association to urgently address the lack of diversity in the women's game, both on the pitch and off the pitch. But yeah, all of those things, doing women's football and putting my heart and soul into it, and meeting those players, and was just incredible, because I used to interview men's players and you couldn't get much out of them. It was very difficult. You've always got a press officer over the shoulder, but the women's game at that stage wasn't quite the women's game it is now, which is a lot more sophisticated, a lot more professionalized. It is becoming more and more like the men's game in many, many ways, and different people have got different views on that. I think the women's game needs to be the women's game, and needs to be treated as the women's game. We could take the best bits of the men's game, why not? But there's a lot about the men's game that perhaps you really don't want in the women's game. So all of that kind of brought me to sort of working on issues of diversity, I guess. Look, I'm from a diverse ethnic background, and typically in this industry, it's not too dissimilar from football management in England, right? I mean, it's actually it's a lot better now, but diversity has been a challenge, retention has been a challenge. Getting journalists from diverse ethnic backgrounds into positions of responsibility, where they're actually commissioning and actually making decisions that really affect the business, that has been a challenge. That remains a challenge even now. But yeah, always did stuff around diversity. That's why I'm really pleased I had a chance to celebrate with you boys about Vinny Company, because I used to do loads of stuff around the Rooney Rule, black managers in the game, and again, I still never understood it. And when I started out, there wasn't this. When you look at black goalkeepers, you mentioned it earlier, Jonty, but actually that is changing, and that's changed in front of our very eyes in the last 5 to 10 years. But when I kind of first started out, it was still very much that, where are the black keepers? Literally, we were looking out for them. They're a lot more commonplace. It's a lot more normalized. But yeah, look, I'm a British South Asian. I love football, and I guess it's no surprise really that most of the work I do now is British South Asians in football. I mean, why didn't I think of that earlier? Honestly, I'm kicking myself. But
Man, that's somewhere where I want to jump in actually, just because that is something that you really are a trailblazer in the UK, and maybe even in the Western Europe around football, or maybe even globally. I don't know, but I've never seen on a major sports media platform someone single-handedly drive one particular you know subsection of football like you have, because for the viewers and people that don't know, like obviously I worked at Sky alongside Dev in a different department, and that's how we kind of got to know each other and work together. And yeah, getting to know all the work you're doing and kind of all the the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it. It's a crazy thing that one person is doing such an extensive job like that. You've obviously got great people like Desi. We talked about it off camera. Desi Ballers. You've got Punjabi Blues, who I think we also met at the EC Heritage Month last year as well. Blues for All, and a couple of other guys doing really amazing stuff. But from that major broadcaster sports media perspective, you're a one-man wrecking team, and you're doing such a great job for it. You see all the articles, the stuff that you put out yesterday about Brandon Keller, getting on and playing for Birmingham. How many? What was it you said? How many impressions? What talk to us a bit about that work, because it's amazing.
Well, look, last time I checked, it was 1.1 million views. Brandon's a great story, and look, I know, it is often the perception that I'm one guy doing it, but look, we're a team at Sky, as you well know, and Anthony, I mean, look, you were one of my best allies. You didn't know me from Adam, but I think our shared values are. Honestly, you still don't know me from Adam, pal. Honestly, and it's a good thing that you don't. But look, no, we've got so many shared values, and for me, that allyship that I've had from people who didn't know me and still don't know me, but buy into what I'm doing, that great unspoken, that love, that admiration, that respect, that's it would have been impossible to do it without allyship from people like yourself. I think in some ways it's even more important that you get the allyship from people who don't know you. Sometimes it's that's when I feel like sometimes that's so much more powerful. But look, there's graphics people, there digital designers. There's you got to think those poor homepage editors who've got to read and sub my work. I mean, they don't realize they are South Asians in football experts. They should be selling their services because they have read so much about South Asians in football. They know more than 99.9%. Don't say it too loudly. They know so much about South Asians in football. I'm so proud that we've got this really humble and knowledgeable. They don't know how much knowledge they actually have. We've got output editors who are playing a part in that. My colleagues, the football journalists, I mean, they make a huge number of sacrifices for me to be able to do the work that I do. The reporters, the Rob Dorsets of this world, I love that man. He's done so much to help me. I'm really lucky. I get to work with my heroes, right? They're my friends. They're my brothers. They inspire me. And look, ultimately, I get so much respect in the community. I get so much respect here. That's the difficulty because it's not easy. It is exactly what you said before. It's blood, sweat, and tears. I'm not sure physically we've quite seen the blood, but the sweat and the tears have been there for sure. I put everything into it, and it's not for me. I'm so invested in this, emotionally invested, physically invested in every which way you can imagine in this space. Yeah, it means absolutely everything to me. It's my life's work, really, if you think about it. And yeah, it's been a great journey because once upon a time, this was never South Asians in football. And I think for me, that feels like one of the biggest achievements. This thing was called Asians in football, and you, man, weren't invited, right? Because people were talking about brown people in football and they was calling it Asians in football. And my whole view here is Asians in football must mean Asians in football. And that means people all across Asia and not just the Indian subcontinent. If you do want to talk about the Indian subcontinent, and I do believe we should be talking about it, well, we should be much more specific around terminologies. They've done us over with this term black, Asian, minority, ethnic. Thank God we binned it off. Ethnically diverse is certainly much more respectful. I'm not having Asian, Pan Asian. Look, you are my Pan Asian brothers. I absolutely love you boys. And there will be a time when Pan Asians in football will rule the roost. But I tell you what, before then, we both have to, our communities have to go on this journey and we've got to have each other's backs. South Asians in football must be recognized. South Asians are the largest single ethnic minority group in this country. They account for 25% of the world's population. I was people from South Asian heritage, South Asian backgrounds, and mate, we're the global majority here. Look at this room. I mean, maybe I don't know, but I feel like we are. There's 1.4 billion in India. There's 1.3 billion in China. So I mean, you just look at that. I feel like somewhere between 45 and 55% of the world's population sits right here in this room almost. Um, it needs attention. It needs focus. It hasn't had it. I like to look at the lessons from other diverse strands in the game. I've learned so much from John Holmes, of one of my heroes. I love talking about that guy. Sports LGBT think tank. Spent 20 years at Sky. Absolute trailblazer in this space. And great to see him coming on the Sky now and talking about Jake Daniels. That was one of the best stories that Sky have done around diversity recently. And it had absolutely nothing to do with South Asians. I absolutely love that. And look, I've learned so much uh, from women's sport, and those lessons from women's sport. And I guess it's no surprise that now I'm the country's only dedicated spotter of South Asian female talent. I'm an FA level 2 scout. And I think the interesting part of that, which maybe we come on to a little bit later, is I've been asking for the stats and the data around South Asian girls playing in this country, around black girls playing in this country. I've been asking for it for years, and I've not had it. I've not seen it. I've seen the film Bend It Like Beckham, just like the next man and woman. I wanted to know who our girls in the game were. I knew a few of them. I knew a handful of them. And we always we mock that. Desi Borders and I mock that term, a handful. When you don't know, you just say it's a handful, right? It's a few. It can't be too many you don't know. Call it a handful. Nobody could tell me who our girls in the game were, the girls who looked like me, the real life Bend It Like Beckhams. I had to go and look for them myself. And yeah, again, I could never have imagined that. I only came here to be a football journalist. Originally, I wanted to be a radio commentator. Like you said, I'm leading change. I'm driving change. I'm so proud to be doing that. And yeah, it's great that I've had just about enough support along the way from just about enough people along the way. It's not easy, whether that's stakeholders, whether that's people in Sky, in the media, in the wider business. But ultimately, the community's had my back, and yeah, I feel like that great unspoken. They know why I'm doing. I don't need to explain why, and I've never really explained why I'm doing what I'm doing. But people get it. People like you guys get it. I love you guys.
Yeah, man. No, it's inspiring. It is inspiring. It's also, I've got to say, it's been hilarious also to be in rooms with you and watch you rattle so many cages and and say the hard things to people and just be like fearless with it, because it's a hard thing to do at a big big sports media company like that to stand up and
It's
take the
what's
ownership of something like that.
it's what's needed. It's what's been missing. It's why I'm not a fan of diversity. Don't say it too loudly. I'm not here for the cosmetics. I'm not here for what we see, right? And even inclusion. I think we're past that. EDI, equality, is it equality? Is it equity? Diversity, inclusion. It's more about creating a sense of belonging, a real culture. That's what the name of the game is. Diversity that's a town we've already left. We're in the future now. You know what I mean? This is 2024, 25, 26. We got to be better than that.
Yeah, 100%, man. I totally agree. And yeah, there's a lot of hopes around the stuff that you're obviously we know the great work that you're doing, the stuff that we talked about earlier. Desi Ballers, Blues for all the amazing orgs in on the South Asian football community scene. You've obviously got we had Alan now was our first guest on the podcast, great friend of ours as well, doing a similar thing on the East and Southeast Asian side. We've got Lawrence Locke doing amazing stuff at the FA as well, on that side as well. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of great people doing great work, and I think still loads of people are working in silos, and we're trying to bring everyone together. And if we can, like you said, work as a pan Asian group or whatever the name wants to be. I think you came up with a pretty good one with me on the phone the other day. But yeah, there's a lot more that we can achieve together as a group. I think to help, because the people that we've had on, not all of them have been Asian, but I think pretty much all of them have been diverse people, from ethnic diverse communities, and it shows how many people from you know diverse communities love and are passionate about football. And it's not quite there where we see, we don't. It's not translated into all aspects and areas of football. We don't see people that look like me and Johns much playing football. We don't see much of them managing in football, coaching in football, doing different jobs like that. And yeah, we don't see many of them in the media as well. On your side, when we were in the building at Sky, there weren't many East or Southeast Asian people on screen or off screen. So it's something to address.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely. I mean, look, it's one of those where I just feel like, and it's not just what I feel. I mean, I'm very closely, embedded within the South Asian community and also within the football community, right? Because I've been a football journalist working at the sharp end of the business for many years. So, as you said, I think at the start, I've got skin in the game, and that's really helped me, right? You can't do this really if you're a newbie, if you've just walked in. You can't really, go on, perhaps the way I do, perhaps. You got to work your way into the crease, if you like. You got to, you got to dig in a little bit first. And look, that's what I've done. And I always say that, I'm trusted. There's a reason why I'm here and doing what I'm doing. I never realized how respected I was. And, I'm blown away by it, because I still can't believe it when people recognize me, when people come up to me, when people say, "Oh, yo, Dev, I've read your stuff. Oh, I saw that." I'm like, "What? Seriously? Like, how do you know who I've gotten?" Honestly, they blow me away every time. I don't want that feeling to ever stop. I never want to be surprised when somebody recognizes me. But I always say, wise man actually in Sky Sports Towers once said, um, they like us because they trust us, and they trust us because they like us. And I thought, you know what? I don't think that's truer for anybody than other than Alan Lau, probably, because people love him, they like it. But that's what it is, right? I feel like, and in order to be that person who is liked and trusted and liked, well, you've got to have humility. And so, as much as I sometimes talk tough, and you have to have the difficult conversations, and ultimately there needs to be accountability in this space, and too many people of color, if you like, or ethnically diverse folk have come in and into these positions. And just because you're from a diverse ethnic background, it does not mean you care about diverse ethnic communities. It does not mean that you're not there for your own interest. It does not mean because you're a person of color, you are going to go and sacrifice and you are going to serve the community. It doesn't mean that at all. That's why my focus, I think, has always got to be on the right people for the job. And look, going back to allyship, some of the best people have been white women, unbelievably, have changed my life, right? So I feel like they have done more for me. I don't want other people, but there have been so many significant white women in my life who have, what the work I've done and the work I'm doing has struck a chord with them. And that empathy, that, I don't know what it is, but I blame my background in women's sport for that. But yeah, without those people, wouldn't be here having this conversation with you about, as you said, trailblazing work, because nobody in the world has ever done it the way I've done it. Nobody in the world is doing it. This is the only section of its kind on a mainstream media website that's ever been created around British South Asians in football. The work started in November 2020. We are now 140 odd. I mean, I'm going to call myself the Rocket soon, because we're heading up to 147, mate. 147 weeks, end of next month. Actually, I think it lands around National Inclusion Week, ironically. So I feel like there's got to be a bit of a party for that.
No, we have to, definitely.
But yeah,
we definitely have to celebrate
time of my
it,
life.
100%.
Time of my life.
Do you wanna call out any particular? Because it is South Asian Heritage Month, and I saw some really interesting discourse online around companies maybe could be doing more, or people are unaware of what kind of big sports media and general media and just general corporations are doing to celebrate. Like, what events have you got coming up? What have you been working on? Anything in particular that you want to call or shout out?
Well, look, I can give you the exclusive. You're getting the exclusive here. I haven't even told them.
Here
But
we go.
Wolverhampton Wanderers on August the 16th. And listen, everyone's invited. And actually, there's a big East and Southeast Asian story with Wolverhampton Wanderers as well. So I think there's a little something for everyone maybe at that event, Wednesday, August the 16th, with the football club, with club staff, with the Punjabi Wolves, with other practitioners in the game. So yeah, that's probably the next one I'm doing. Actually, we were at an event, a joint event, a first of its kind joint event between Brentford and Fulham. I feel like it was last night. Actually, it was last night, and same night that Brandon Kaler, of course, broke the internet and made history by becoming the first men's player ever to play for Birmingham City from a British South Asian background. So yeah, it's been relentless this month. I mean, I always feel like everyone seems to remember me at this time of year, but the big thing for me is this month runs from July the 18th to August the 17th. What happens on August the 18th? Talk to me. And I'm telling every single football club now, I work differently now. You want me for South Asian Heritage Month, you get me after that as well, because I'm not here for one night stand. I'm here for a long-term relationship. That's what South Asians in football need.
That is a perfect metaphor to describe the work being done, and not stopping it directly after the end of Pride Month or the end of South Asian Heritage Month or the end of Black History Month or EC Heritage Month.
The
But
very
it's
definition of box ticking, right? You
yeah,
do it because you tick a box. I always go back to everybody in the game, and I'm very critical of the work that takes place around British South Asians in football because I'm big on standards, and the standard has not been good enough, and that's not a slight on the South Asian community. It's not the slight on the football community. It's not a slight on the wider community. It's a slight on every community. Okay, everybody needs to do better. That's why I say raise your game. I don't care if you're a parent. I don't care if you're a player. I don't care if you're a scout, a manager, a media mogul. I want to see more from you. I need to see more from you. Raise your game for diverse ethnic communities. And if you want to know how it's done, come and have a chat with me. Simple as.
No, 100%, man. And I think we all, we've talked loads and loads off camera, and we obviously been doing other work together and stuff like that to support each other's community. But I think where we'll leave this section and probably the podcast in general is just to try and encourage and support, as you called it, Pan Asian uh, involvement in football, and try and kind of foster a more supportive relationship and not have things like Asians in football when we exclude certain groups, and try to be, like you said, as inclusive as possible, and make sure that when we say Asian, we really mean Asian. We really mean we've got everyone within that huge continental group at heart, and we're working on it from a really inclusive, and as you said, belonging is a really key thing. There's a lot of British Asians of many different groups or nationalities or ethnicities, and we want to see all of them win. We want to see and we want to see us as a collective all at least see ourselves and feel like we fit into this game that we love. But Johns, we have a very special question, don't we, for guests? And I'm going to let you say something because you've been absolutely mute for about half an hour.
No. I mean, I think the one point I wanted to make, and this is really the point that stuck with me, is that it is all about a sense of belonging. And I think, I don't know about you, I know the answer for both of you, but we all love the game so much. I know that it's been such a big part of all of our lives growing up, from whether we were playing it, watching it, whatever else, commentating on it. We love the game, and we understand how much good the game can do in the right format, communicate in the right way. And it's almost as if there's a party going on, everyone's having a lot of fun at the party, and I think the point is everyone needs to be invited to that party. We all need to get a chance to enjoy this beautiful game. It's not always beautiful in some of the things that happen in it, but we know at its purest form, this is the game that we love, that has all brought us together, and it's the reason why this podcast exists in the first place. So I really love that message. I really love the idea of the sense of belonging and getting everyone together. And I think the question is, and this is a question we ask all of our guests, dead or alive, playing now or playing before, Dev, who is your favourite Asian footballer of all time and why?
Oh, I mean, look, that's such, and I'm going to answer this, I suppose, in true Dev Trehan fashion. But if you're going to ask me Asian footballer, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you a South Asian footballer, and I'm going to give you an East and Southeast Asian footballer as a treat. And I'm going to start with the latter. For me, I think it's such a tough one, because I think Maz Pacheco, who's Filipino, played at Liverpool, played at Reading, played at Aston Villa, has just signed a new contract at Aston Villa, a left back by trade, a lawyer, qualified lawyer, someone who I actually first met when she was 17 years old, playing at Liverpool for Matt Beard in his first spell in charge at Liverpool. She was a teammate of Farrah Williams, a teammate of Katie Zelem, who's obviously at the Women's World Cup now with England. She's got to be right up there. But Neil Etheridge as well. I absolutely love Neil. What a great role model. Again, Filipino, mixed heritage, and an absolute icon by all accounts in the Philippines. Like, there's Manny Pacquiao. There's a few. I had no idea, right? And I just want to, bro, can I just hang out with you like pre-season, like when you go on holiday, right? Just take me with you. I'm here with Neil Etheridge, right? I want to but Hidetoshi Nakata is the one for me, right? Like Palmer back in the day. I mean, now he was a proper baller. I know Shinji Kagawa came afterwards and had an amazing spell at Borussia Dortmund. Maybe not quite hit the heights at Manchester United, despite a big fanfare. I quite like Junichi Inamoto, actually, just because he went from Arsenal, went to Fulham, and scored a hat trick for Fulham in a European game. Actually, their second season in the Premier League. But yeah, Nakata for me, I think Hidetoshi Nakata at Parma, attacking midfielder,
Oh, he was an icon. He was an
oh,
icon.
absolutely, and just
icon.
one I felt like we should have seen more of against in England and against English opposition. I feel like it would have been a real treat to have a prime Hidetoshi Nakata in the Premier League at the time. But going back to the South Asian part, you did say Asian player. I feel like I've given you 3 East and Southeast Asians there. I mean, honestly, I'm making a mockery of this question. I suppose it's not fair, I don't think, for me to pick a current South Asian player because I absolutely love all of them. Do you know what I mean? I love every single one of those kids, and they are kids. I always see them like that, and but it'd have to be Michael Chopper, I think. Someone who's never really had, I don't think, the respect he deserves in this game, and there are reasons for that. Off-field issues, very well documented. He's fronted up, and again, probably hasn't even had the respect in that sense as well, about being able to come out and talk so openly about some of the issues that affected him during his career. But kid who started off at Newcastle United, went to the same school as his hero, who was Alan Shearer at the time, and like his hero, he was a goal scorer, and also later had a chance to play with him, and played at the Nou Camp no less against Barcelona in the Champions League for his boyhood club, Newcastle United. Somehow managed to get away with going and playing for Sunderland as well, and scoring, I think, in a derby game for Sunderland against Newcastle, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna have to double check that one. Had a really decorated career. Played loan spells at Nottingham Forest, loan spells at Watford, loan spells at Barnsley, and spent some time at Cardiff City as well. Initially a loan spell at Cardiff, made a permanent move, and then came back and had a second spell at Cardiff City as a player, and probably played the best football of his career there at Cardiff City. He was formed a great strike partnership with Jay Bothroyd, former Arsenal kid who's got a great career story. Played at Perugia, played out in Thailand as well, did Jay, and actually quite a regular pundit now on Sky Sports News. But yeah, Chops ended up scoring 100 league goals in England, 100 league goals, and is the only British South Asian ever to do that. And again, nobody talks about this. Maybe because nobody knows it, maybe because nobody appreciates it. Our stories matter, whether we're South Asians, whether East Asians or Southeast Asians or Middle Easterns, or whether we're from Africa, whether we're from the Caribbean, whether we're from Uzbekistan or Mongolia. We need to see our stories being told. That's why I'm so passionate about it. Michael spent some time in Scotland playing at Alloa Athletic. I got to spend a hell of a lot of time with him in India when he had 2 spells at Kerala Blasters. And those were great times. But yeah, for me, Michael Chopra, and then really, I should give this one to somebody who, at the time when I started out my career, I had no idea this player was of South Asian heritage. He's an absolute legend at his football club. He's one of the best players ever to kick a ball for his football club, and that football club has just been promoted to the Premier League, and that's Ricky Hill. And I had the unbelievable honor and privilege to actually break that story, that Ricky Hill was in fact the first and remains the only British South Asian ever to play for the full England men's senior national team. We didn't know it at the time, but actually Ricky's dad, his whole dad's side of the family are Indian. They come from Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, in the northern part of India. Mum's Jamaican, actually was born in Jamaica, grew up in Jamaica, came over sort of very early to Northwest London. He's North London. He's like us. You know what I mean? North London, great guy. Grew up in Brent. Went to, I think, John Kelly Technical College in Neasden. Part of the school football team. Not very many black kids part of school teams at the time. They played in a cup final. Played, I think it was somewhere around Bedfordshire, Dunstable, that sort of area. And driving past was somebody who is synonymous with Tottenham Hotspur, synonymous with Luton Town. That's a chap called David Pleat, legendary football manager, of course. And it was old school, right? he just seen out of his window, some kids, playing in this final, didn't have any idea it was a final, and walked over and said, "Who is that kid in midfield?" And that kid in midfield was Ricky Hill, and he signed him up for Luton Town and played first team football as a teenager at Luton Town and had, some horrific injuries. And look, Ricky Hill is a player who's come from a generation where they were suffering dogs abuse. He had to endure so much that we are really quite fortunate in that sense that we certainly, our kids now don't have to endure what some of the players like Ricky Hill had to endure. And the questions that's leveled at a lot of people is, well, why didn't they speak about it at the time, that heritage? I'm not being funny, but when you're getting, when you've had your leg broken, as Ricky Hill did as a young man on the pitch, away from home, and the whole crowd, or not the whole crowd, but a significant proportion of that crowd is hurling racist abuse at you when you're lying on the floor with a broken leg, I think Ricky Hill can be excused for not wanting to fess up to being South Asian, on top of being a very obvious black footballer as well. The first black footballer that played for Bobby Robson for England. I think maybe the fifth black player to play for England. Part of that famous, I think it was the Littlewoods Cup final winning team for Luton Town that beat Arsenal 3-2 with his good friend Brian Steen, who scored a couple of goals in that game. And look, the other thing about Ricky Hill is that he's a real pioneer behind the Rooney Rule. He actually went out and spoke to all of the people in America. Forgive me, you're going to have to forgive me. I do know the story, but I've forgotten their names and I don't want to get them wrong. But actually came over and had discussions with the EFL about trying to adopt the Rooney Rule here in England. Was met with a lot of resistance at the time. And, nowadays we have this thing called the Football Leadership Diversity Code, which, it's not mandatory and not enforceable. But it's thanks to people like Ricky Hill who have been real trailblazers in this game. He's someone I wish I'd have known. And yeah, I'm just really, quite proud of that story as well. That when I dropped that story, I put to bed one of the biggest myths about Asians in football, or South Asians in football, whichever one you want to call it. When is an Asian kid going to play for England? When is a South Asian kid going to play for England? Well, guess what? It's already happened. That's changed the game, that has.
Yeah, man. So again, something did not know. I did not know Ricky Hill was part South Asian, and it's really important that so much history has been lost. And I know you kind of cheated on that answer because you've given us about 5-6 names for that.
Easy.
So you've done a real sneaky
and
one
no
there,
current players. Well, except for the East and Southeast Asians. I don't mind naming current and East and Southeast Asian players, but I will get pelters if I name a South Asian player and don't name them.
Nah, that's fair. I think Ricky Hill was I'm fine if you go for him because obviously trailblazer and yeah, Chopra's a great one because I remember his days at Cardiff and he was a gunman. He used to score so many goals, and yeah, he was just one of those players who he was almost like a Jermaine Defoe type character. He was just concentrated on scoring goals and just having impact. And he was definitely of our generation. I think me and Johns, we definitely remember Michael.
Oh, I remember him at Newcastle very very clearly.
Yeah. And the Asian, the East and Southeast Asian ones are good shouts. I don't think anyone has chosen Nakata yet, but he's definitely
it's the biggest miss. The fact that no one's chosen him because he is like one of the most iconic East Asian players I can think of.
Yeah, goal Lazio, Football Italia. He was part of that legendary almost Parma team, wasn't he? That just had so many star players in it, and he was, just a trailblazer, man. So yeah, it's great getting that insight.
I'm going to throw in one more for you, only because I was there when she signed for the club, and I think at the time nobody knew if she was going to be there 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. I think she ended up staying for at least 7, and that's Ji So-yun, South Korean international, who used to play for Chelsea ladies back then, and obviously Chelsea women now. But G, what a baller that girl was. Absolutely loved watching her play. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, picked up FAWSL Player of the Year on at least one occasion, and I think maybe even PFA Women's Player of the Year because it was only just introduced sort of around that sort of time. but phenomenal talent, and love the fact that no one else has gone for Nakata. I'm pretty sure no one's going to go for Ji So Young. So
No, definitely not.
That's
No.
my contribution for East and Southeast Asians in football
honestly,
during
you've done-
South Asian Heritage
I
Month.
love it.
You've done a great job. That's something that people haven't. I don't think anyone that's come onto the pod so far has mentioned a women's football player. So you've done a great job in catching us up a little bit, because another shout on that, and it was actually Desi Ballers who taught me this, but I had no idea. Sam Kerr had South Asian heritage, and she's like an absolute baller and absolutely smashing up the WSL, and did decent at the Women's World Cup that's going on right now as well. So yeah, there's a huge area for us to dig into on that side as the podcast develops. But man, I'm very aware that we're close to 2 hours. I knew this was going to be a long one because we had so much to catch up on, and yeah, you're doing so much great work. I wouldn't want us to do a whistle stop tour through all of the great things that you're doing. So thanks a lot for coming on, Dev. We'll definitely have to get you on again in the future. And it was amazing to have you on, man, and real honor to hear about all the great stuff that you're doing. But yeah, we'll wrap up the pod here. So first of all, if you're listening on audio only platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that kind of stuff, please remember to follow and leave a 5-star review if possible. All the engagement we can get will help. We're trying to grow the podcast as much as possible, and yeah, that's the kind of stuff that helps us kind of improve our visibility on the algorithms and all that. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with your friends or anyone you know who cares about football, especially Asians in football or South Asians in football. South Asian Heritage Month, it's really an important time. So yeah, that would really help as well. But yeah, Johnson, any last words before we wrap up?
I just want to say a big thank you to Dev coming on, and I understand why everyone speaks so highly of you. You are a legend, and I definitely hope you can come back on again. Hopefully not too far away. Hopefully it can be relatively soon, because I mean that's why I didn't want to speak too much, because I got to listen. I got to take it in, keep my mouth shut, and really understand where you're coming from. So I'm so glad you're coming on here, and yeah, I really hope you can come on again.
You try and stop me from coming back on. Yeah, honestly,
Steph,
right?
For context, I have to tell you, it is an honour that Johns was quiet when you were talking, because it's not half. It's a hard task to try and get him to not jump in and tell you you're talking out your ass or something like that about football opinion. So you managed to keep him stum. So
he's
that's
not
a real sign.
He's not a biased United fan. I don't need to do that. It's all right.
And on that bombshell, we'll wrap up the pod. So thanks a lot, Dev. Thanks a lot, Johns. And see you guys soon.
Love you, boys. Thank you.